Welcome everyone to the June National Equine Health Call for the equine industry. As a reminder, these calls are recorded and they are posted after the call within a week to the Equine Disease Communication Center. And those are posted for everyone to view under the news section of the Equine Disease Communication Center on their website. Just another reminder that our next call will be a co-hosted call where we will do a joint call with the U.S. Animal Health Association Committee on Equine, and that call will be facilitated by the committee chair, Dr. Joe Fish. We will send out information as it gets closer to that call regarding the agenda items. A couple other reminders for you. As a reminder, the American Horse Council's annual 2025 Issues Forum is going to be held June 22nd to 25th at the Omni Shoreham Hotel in Washington, D.C. And you can go to their website for registration for that conference. Again, I want to say I welcome any thoughts or questions or topic suggestions for folks for this call. As we do have new folks joining this call today, as I've received several email requests for joining this call, I just want to go over that this is a general equine health call that is held on the second Thursday of every month. Anybody that is interested in joining the call distribution list is to email me, Flynn at USEF, and I'm happy to add you to that conference call list. The topics are all focused on equine health related issues or industry disease outbreaks that may be occurring. So just to give you an update, today's questions came in for screwworm, and I appreciate Dr. Burke Healy with the USDA to give us an update on the Mexico screwworm situation and answer some of the questions that I have received. Dr. Healy, would you like to take it away?
Thank you, Dr. Flynn. Just for a little bit of background, as you mentioned, since we may have some new folks on here, the screwworm outbreak has been managed in the Darien Gap of Panama for the last several decades until about 2 years ago, when we began to have an outbreak in Panama that overwhelmed the Darien Gap and worked its way up through Central America until it finally reached Mexico in late November of last year. So since then, Mexico has been fighting to contain it and control it, and USDA has been assisting in that process. There is one facility in the world that makes sterile screwworm flies, and that is in Panama. It's a collaboration between USDA and the Panamanian government, and they were producing about 20 million flies a week to maintain the Darien Gap. Once the outbreak in Panama took place and the flies began to move north with great pressures that they did, we facility stood it up and finally got it up to a production now that's roughly 100 million flies a week. Today, all 100 million flies per week are being moved into Mexico for distribution and help Mexico to kind of hold things where they are there. The case numbers total are officially, they were 1993 as of last Saturday. They're up a little over 2,000 now. They roughly pick up anywhere from 150 to 200 new cases each week. Most of those cases are in the Yucatan states, those 5 Yucatan states. We are trying to use the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, which is that most narrow neck of Mexico, as a barrier zone, and we've used that historically and successfully in the past, but it's the narrowest isthmus or narrowest landmass that we have, and so it gives us a kind of a pinch point, if you will, where we can maximize the use of the flies that we have. Historically, in the old program, when Mexico was fighting screwworms, they had a production facility, and along with the other production in the U.S., we were putting 400 to 500 million flies in a week. And so, as you can see, we're at 100 million now. And so we're trying to take advantage of our geographical boundaries where we can. To date, we've had a few incursions that have broke out on the north side or the west side of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. The most current case that's out there that's active is roughly 100 miles past that secondary barrier that Mexico stood up. But our flight distribution pattern today allows us to cover the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. It kind of straddles the isthmus, if you will. So roughly half the flies are on one side of the isthmus and the other half on the other. And we're focusing in that region. Our fly distribution has, since we've begun that polygon, we've not had any flies that have broke out on the north side of our fly distribution. And that's the first time in a month or so that we've been able to say that. Even when we were going through Central America, it seemed as though we were always distributing the flies on the edge of the outbreak and not necessarily on the front edge of it, or, you know, ahead of the outbreak and holding it. So we're confident with what we've got going on there today in the efforts that we placed in there. And I know we've got some questions here, so I'll try to go through those questions as well. And what first and foremost is on the borders and the imports of horses from Mexico. Today, the borders are closed, and that is while we do some further investigation in Mexico as to what we can manage and what they're managing, and assure that the efforts that we're putting in place as far as their active surveillance, their movement controls, their treatments, management of the affected herds, things of that nature is taking place in an adequate measure. As we've stated, throughout the Yucatan, and when it broke into Chiapas initially, we were struggling to stay in front of it, and Mexico was struggling to keep the cases behind or contained, and they eventually broke into Oaxaca and Veracruz, even though they had two different checkpoint barriers set up to try to catch or anything that would be moving through there. So, like I say, right now things are positive. We've got a team of four people, four teams that are 3 to 4 people each that are going into Mexico next week. We had one team that just got back on Friday. We had a couple of individuals of New Orleans Screw-On folks that were down there 3 weeks prior to that, looking at trapping and helping them with designs of traps and locations for traps and things of that nature. So there's a cumulative effort between USDA and Seneca and the Mexico authorities to try to manage that situation. But until we get these review teams back, I know that our borders will stay closed, and we'll see what those the outcomes of those investigations and their findings look like, both the good and the bad, and work with Mexico to kind of see where we need to tweak the program a little bit. So at this moment, bringing horses out of Mexico is not a possibility for any purposes, as the Secretary has closed the border to cattle, bison, and all horses. That includes whether they fly in or they come across the borders down there on the land masses, or whether they're boated in. So there's a complete embargo on them at this time. What's the other one on here? Can we bring them around, I guess, through Canada? If it's a Mexican horse and Canada accepts it and imports it, and then it's a Canadian import coming in, then that's a different scenario, obviously. But horses directly from Mexico are not allowed into the country. So that's a little bit of an overview. And as if we are unable to control the outbreak where it is now in that lower part of Mexico, and it were to move into the United States, we are developing contingency plans for how we would respond to it, both as it gets closer to the United States, in other words, in a border state or farther north in Mexico, as well as an actual incursion in the U.S. The Secretary has assured Mexico and promised them $21 million to assist them with building a facility that they anticipate will take probably another $40 million of their dollars plus ours, so $60 million facility in Chiapas, Mexico, to add to the fly production capabilities. And we anticipate that's going to take us 9 to 12 months to get that facility operational in Mexico. in the interim, I guess there's two phases of it I should point out. One of them is there's a production phase, and that's where you actually have the breeding facilities and you breed the flies, raise the pupae up, and sterilize those pupae. At that point, and that's what's occurring today in Panama. Once they're sterilized pupae, then we transport them to a distribution center. And that's where we finish rearing them out into adult flies and then put them into our distribution facilities, whether that be ground distribution, planes or trucks or whatever it might be. Today, we're doing essentially all airplane dispersal. If we got into a situation as the flies move farther north, as we've done through Central America and into Mexico, we keep moving those distribution centers farther and farther north because we've got limited distribution patterns that we can manage with those flies and with the planes. So if we get into the US, we'll obviously have a distribution center set up here. And there's discussions going on now and sources of funding is being sought to see whether we will be able to build another fly production facility that would be in the US. So there's a lot of interest in that occurring as well. But we don't have any final word on whether that will or will not happen at this moment. So that's kind of where we all sit. Anyway, we can answer any additional questions that you may have. I don't know. Let me chat here.
I do have a couple in the chat that I'll review first. I thought I heard that flies have been detected 25 miles north of the barrier. Is that true? And I believe this is in reference to the second barrier in Mexico.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there's basically three lines, and they're working on a fourth one. But they had Mexico established their first barrier in the states of Tabasco and Chiapas, which were checkpoints. Behind that, they had a set of federal barriers, which were on the borders of Veracruz and Tabasco and Oaxaca and Chiapas. And those were their secondary barriers. Beyond that is the actual isthmus itself. So if you look at a map and pull that up, you can see that where the state boundaries are. So sometimes we talk about when we're talking about where those barriers are. The northernmost case today is the one in Oaxaca that's about 100 miles past that secondary barrier or the border of the Oaxaca, Chiapas and Veracruz, Tabasco, that boundary, if you will, of those state boundaries. So it's about 100 miles past there up in the mountainous lands. So we had one that got about 150 miles. That case was taken care of and cleared up. And then just last week, a new case popped up that was about 100 miles. So we do have cases that are beyond the isthmus there. But as I stated earlier, our flight pattern is broad enough that they're all underneath the sterile insect distribution pattern that we're putting out there. So we're comfortable that we're putting the sterile flies out there on that leading edge to slow down any movements moving up.
Dr. Healy, as a follow-up question, the question came as, where can they have a map or case count map? Is there one available for screwworm in the Mexico areas?
There is, and you can go onto the USDA New World Screwworm website, and if you follow down through there, there's a couple of options where you can follow up with what's going on with Mexico and Central America, and it's got those cases that are posted on there. Mexico is not posting the actual case numbers, to my knowledge. I mean, they share them with us on a weekly basis, but they're not posting them out on a public website that I've seen, other than that particular one which COPEG is helping us to keep active.
Yeah, and the follow-up comment came is the COPEG one seems out of date. Is there a more recent one?
Yeah, the COPEG one is out of date, and we've been working to try to keep that one updated to the best of our ability. But if you go through that USDA website, that's probably the best sources of information that we can share right now.
Okay. Another question came in. Does USDA have any plans for a stop movement or federal rule upon a New World screwworm detection in the states?
Stop movement on a national level? No, we would not entertain that. I mean, Obviously, we've talked about that with other diseases such as foot and mouth and some of those bit more contagious diseases. You got to remember this is a fly. The fly itself is not that, but certainly the animals that are impacted by the fly are mobile based on what we as humans put them on trailers and haul them around. And quite honestly, the uncontrolled progression of screwworm through Central America was due exactly to that, mostly illegal movements and uncontrolled movements throughout Central America into Mexico.
Which brings another comment slash question. We recognize that there is illegal movement and the closure of the border is increasing that illegal movement of horses and livestock into the United States. What efforts are being made to address the illegal movement side of potential incursion?
So a couple of different things. One is we're working with the Border Patrol, CBP, and managing, so anytime they see any kind of movements across their boundaries that they pick up, they're notifying us. And then, of course, we have our tick riders that have been there for years, managing that region of the Texas where they're managed, where they're looking for the ticks and riding the boundaries and the borders. So any of those animals that we incur as we come across them or getting prophylactic treatments and examinations as though they were brought in legally through a normal port before they're disposed of.
I'm not sure I'm going to say this correctly. So Dr. Lopez, if I did not, please add in. It says, where is the APHIS PPQ facility that may be used for distribution in 6 to 9 months?
So APHIS is working on building a facility or looking at a distribution facility that would be in McAllen, Texas, in that region. But it's not, we don't have the full green light to go ahead on moving with that. So more information will be coming out on that in the next few weeks as the secretary makes some final decisions. The facility in Mexico is in Chiapas, Mexico. Matapa, Chiapas is this town. And that one will be in production in 9 to 12 months as far as producing flies. But we are looking at a distribution center in McAllen, Texas. That looks like the most likely location for us. But again, there's nothing definitive yet on that.
Okay. And just for clarification purposes, a comment was, we believe that horses are still correctly flying into the import centers, but they just can't cross land borders.
Right now, it should not, it's supposed to be all horses are embargoed.
Okay, we need to look into that because we are aware of horses that are able to come in via the airports through the import centers.
Yeah, initially they were, but I think at this point they've stopped all of them.
Okay. We will follow up on that because folks are saying that they are coming. So,
okay.
And that would be a huge issue for us. And then the last question that I have so far is, if it were to enter the United States, would we be able to move the screwworm sterile fly distribution to the United States instead of Mexico?
Yes, we will. And that's the point of the distribution center is if we stand up a distribution center, then we've already made the logistical arrangements and determinations on how to get the flies from Panama into the U.S. and then distribute them out of the U.S. And so, again, unfortunately, we only got 100 million flies. That's the limit. No matter where we put them, that's the maximum that we're going to have. But we would intend to bring all 100 million of those from Panama directly to the United States if we have a case in the U.S. that warrants it.
Okay. Any other last questions? I don't see any hands. I don't see any other comments or questions in the chat. As a reminder, everyone, if you do have questions and you come up with them after the call, please email them to me and then I will forward them on to USDA to get us some answers. Dr. Healy, we greatly appreciate your time and giving us this information and the updates.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, sir.
Jump off.
All right, we will transition to Dr. Donata, who is with the University of Florida as an associate professor. And she is going to give us a hot off the presses AAEP infectious disease update on some cases.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to give you guys an update about what the IDC has been up to. We are a pretty active group with the AAEP. We have several subcommittees, and in addition to revising disease guidelines, as I think most people are probably aware, we try to respond to sort of emerging needs, of which there are several this year. And we have some new resources online that I just wanted everybody to be aware of. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just have a couple slides. Katie, can you see that?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to an entire new sort of new type of guidelines within our resource library. So these are the field diagnostic guidelines, and these have been a long time coming, many years in the making, but have been sort of brought over the finish line these last couple of years by Dr. Toby Pinn Woodcock at Cornell. And she leads the subcommittee that have put these together. And like I said, it has taken a few years and a lot of work, but I think these are going to be really valuable for practitioners everywhere. These are guidelines intended to address cases from a syndromic approach. So as opposed to our disease guidelines, where you have a lot of great information, but you need to know the disease you're working with to know which guideline to actually download and use. These come at it from the other end, from a broad-based syndrome. And so right now, online, as of today, the infectious neurologic disease guidelines are up, as well as the acute infectious diarrhea guidelines. And then we are in the process of approving and revising infectious respiratory disease, and abortion will be after that. And so some, again, hopefully really valuable resources for practitioners who are maybe out in the field going out to see, say, a neurologic horse with a fever and trying to remember what kind of differentials might be on their list, what sort of diagnostics might they want to collect when they're out there. And this is just one of the parts of this, of the neurologic guidelines, of these really nice diagnostic algorithms. And these are co-branded with the AAEP and with the Cornell University College of Vet Med. And you can see here, working through from the top down, a practitioner can decide whether they have primary neurologic disease, their fever, and then based on that, work their way down this diagnostic tree. And not only does it give them a nice list of differentials or diseases they might be thinking of, both the common ones and some of the not so common ones, but it also lets them know what samples in what sample receptacle they should choose. So again, really practical, very field-based information. There is one of these diagnostic algorithms for the respiratory and the diarrhea, and there will be one for the abortion as well. So this is kind of the sort of flagship document for these. But in addition to the algorithm or the flow chart, there are text guidelines that go along with them that have not only lists of the differential diseases, but also links to the flow chart itself, but also links to things like biosecurity guidelines and other kind of helpful diagnostics. The neurologic disease guidelines also has this handy dandy CSF interpretation chart. And so this again was put together by Toby and her team, and it actually lists the cytologic readout with protein, nucleated cell count, cell types, color for a variety of different neurologic diseases. And so these are really good. I mean, if you're in academia, this is a great teaching tool. I share this with all my equine students, actually all my students in general, but also really nice if you're running a CSF in the field, just a nice reminder of what you might find and what disease it might lead you towards. So we haven't really had a resource like this online through AAP before, and I just hope that these are going to be really helpful. There is also, it's more text-based, but a sample and transport document that just as a reminder for, depending on what kind of test one might be submitting, how that sample should be packaged, shipped, what kind of tube or receptacle to put it in, whether it needs to be frozen or chilled or room temp. So again, practical information to make sure that practitioners are really maximizing the output of their diagnostics. Any questions about the field guidelines?
Hey,
They are
Sally. Hey, Sally, we did just get one in about the field guidelines and these resources. Are these resources available to non-AAEP members, such as a state animal health official or industry organization?
I think that you have to be able to log into AAP. I think they're similar to the disease guidelines in that you need to be able to log into aap.org and access the veterinary guidelines. They're in their own tab. I just accessed them today putting this together. But I believe they are for AAP members only. With that said, if you are a state animal health official and you want a copy of these, I'm sure that AAP would be okay with us sharing these, and I'm happy to share these with anybody for whom they would be of use.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, many of you have heard about this, but it's official and it's out. This is the USDA vaccine infographic. So this has been another long time project, collaboration between AAP and the USDA import centers. And this is a reminder that imported horses need to be vaccinated well, actually literally 100% of the time. When they get here, they need to be vaccinated with our core vaccines in addition to, of course, the risk-based vaccines. So this flyer, this infographic is available on EDCC. Feel free to share it. That is not something you have to have a membership in order to access. It's available to anyone, horse owners or veterinarians. It's also being included now in the printed packet material that leaves with the horse when they leave the quarantine center. So hopefully now reducing the risk of everybody thinking that the horse was vaccinated at some other point, whether it be their country of origin, in quarantine, in transport, who knows where people think they're getting vaccinated, but the answer is they're not. And so this also has QR codes that link directly to the AAP vaccine guidelines. And then finally, I wanted to alert everyone to a couple of webinars. This is just something we've sort of formed together this week, but August 13th, we are going to have an AAP New World Screwworm webinar. These are going to be there's going to be two of them, one for veterinarians and one for horse owners, and they're going to be 30 minutes. So just kind of short, bite-sized piece of information where people can hopefully join in and find out what the current risk is. If it'll be different, certainly in August than it is now, but what to look for, who to contact should people think that they encounter a case. So this will just be a bit of a state of the situation available to everyone. We're going to send out, AAP is going to send out alerts separately for veterinarian and horse owner groups. And the three panelists will be someone from the USDA. We, of course, always we love to have Angela, but I believe USDA might have some New World Screwworm experts that they may opt to have represent the USDA. And then it'll be myself and then Dr. Andrew Short, who is a UF veterinarian entomology, who's entomology expert and department chair. And he is currently working on a New World Screwworm response proposal through the University of Florida. So he's going to be there to represent. I talked to him this week and realized how much I don't know about just the epidemiology and the life cycle and all the stuff about the actual bug itself, or the insect, I should say. And so he's going to be there to answer all of the creepy crawly questions, because I just uniformly answer, ew, gross. So he's going to be there to give useful answers. And so there's been no alerts have gone out about this. Like I said, we're just shaping this up this week, but look for it it'll go out via email and social media. And that's all I have, Katie.
Back to that international vaccination issue. Can you give us some insights on some of the cases you've had and some of the reasons that we wanted to put this information together so folks understand that this isn't just a flyer that had no background to it?
Yeah, this has come after several years of seeing core diseases in recently imported horses. We had probably the most alarming one. Many of you guys, I'm sure, have heard us mention before. We had a rabies case 2 Novembers ago, so November of 2023, that had been imported 6 months prior. He was a warm blood stallion, had come from Europe and had integrated into the Florida winter show circuit. And typical of sort of equine management in Florida, he was getting turned out at night, which is very typical, even because even in the winter, it's pretty warm during the day. And I think having horses out at night probably increases their risk of interaction with nocturnal wildlife. He had not received any vaccines whatsoever, but came to he was referred to Florida, University of Florida, after having seen a couple veterinarians in the field for lameness that then progressed to bad behavior, and then he colicked. And all of this happened in rapid progression, just underscoring that rabies does whatever it wants. By the time he got to us, he was febrile, very neurologically inappropriate, belligerent, and we put him in a stall and nobody touched him. But when he came back positive for rabies, he had exposed, gosh, Joe Fish can probably remember this case, I think 23 people in 2 counties, many of whom had not been vaccinated, some of whom were kids that had been volunteering for with local veterinarians, and this horse had had his teeth looked at, he'd been tubed, so it was a real mess. And I think typical of this particular scenario, every step of the way, the horse arrived at the veterinary clinics with a very clear, he is totally up to date. And being a very fancy, valuable imported horse, he had no shortage of a team on his side. He had a chiropractor, a body worker, he had several veterinarians, he had trainers, he had a communicator, but everybody thought somebody else had vaccinated this horse. And he had, I think when we finally dug the records in his import paperwork, he'd had a flu rhino in Europe 2.5 years earlier, and that had been it. So he's really the one that kicked this off as all right, we have to do something. Because again, it really wasn't anybody being negligent. Everybody just thought somebody else had done it. We had a West Nile case here at UF, a recently imported horse, probably back in 2018 now, 2019, she lived. But this past February, we had a Triple E case that actually was showing at WEC, had been in the country for 3 weeks, had come from Europe, was found febrile, down and non-responsive, was euthanized there on site at WEC. And that horse ended up having Triple E. Having only been in this country for 3 weeks, the owner had not turned in the insurance paperwork yet. It was on her desk. So that was a complete financial loss. And again, same scenario, nobody could believe the horse hadn't been vaccinated for Triple E. And certainly the scenario where the owner realizes that their horse died for, a $50 core vaccine is not anything that any vet wants to have to, not a question a vet wants to answer anytime soon. So hopefully this will be of help to prevent that scenario moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I really appreciate all the effort of the Infectious Disease Committee in producing all of these documents that are extremely beneficial. I will say that we did have somebody post that they're not an AAP member, and they were able to access the infectious disease guidelines for diarrhea and neurologic disease.
Oh, good. Perfect. Thank you.
They were able to yep. So thank you. And again, these documents are available, and we encourage folks to use them, as well as those that are in states where there are imported horses coming in, to get the message out about vaccination. Because I've also found that they say they're vaccinated, but they're typically only going to be vaccinated for flu rhino or just flu, because that is a requirement for a lot of the competition horses. And sometimes that, especially rabies or the diseases that are more specific to the United States, like our arboviruses. And before turning it over to our last speaker, I'm going to say thank you to Dr. Donata. And I do have a message from Dr. Healy. He did put in the chat that there is a correction that horses can fly into the United States, but they cannot go through a land border port. So they are allowed to enter from Mexico through the import center. Thank you, Dr. Healy, for that update. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Joe Fish, who is the chair of the U.S. Animal Health Association Committee on Equine, to provide an update to us. As a reminder, I said at the beginning of the call, he will be the individual facilitating the July call, as we typically once a year join with the USHA Committee on Equine to host this call. So take it away, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Katie. And thanks everybody for letting me speak. So for those that don't know, the United States Animal Health Association Committee on Equine it's a group of state animal health officials, laboratorians, people like Dr. Donata that have university experience, but also clinical experience. We do have some private veterinarians. We definitely have a lot of people that are in industry that are associated with transportation, both international and domestic. So it's a great group of people that look at things from a lot of different directions. And with that, every year we come up with a number of, not a specific number, and it varies from year to year. We've had as little as 0 one time in the last decade, and then I think as many as 5 or so resolutions. Those vary from equine pyroplasmosis and genotyping to a push on microchipping for horses, to vesicular stomatitis, trying to get consistent regulations within all the states, because it's really hard if you're going from one state to the other and everybody has different rules. So trying to get state consistency. Also the Equine Disease Communication Center, helping support for that to get off the ground and continue to develop. Work on equine viral arteritis, also the NALM study. As a plug for that, we will have in the November in-person meeting in Denver for the United States Animal Health Association in-person meeting, there will be a NALMS presentation. As a side note, I still probably have, out of that 2-hour agenda, it's in November, so I'm not expecting to be full yet, but I probably have about 45 minutes to an hour if somebody has a topic for consideration. I appreciate that and definitely work you in. Continuing also EIA labs, so consistency there, and also sorry, for the consistency within the labs and reporting, and international import. And then also with CEM being Florida, and we had our domestic find working. So we had a previous CEM resolution, and I'm on the meeting next time, I'm going to have a draft that I'll present. That is the upcoming resolution, which will be for PCR testing on imported horses in overgrowth situations. They recent out of NDSL is for overgrowth. We used to be able, as state animal health officials, used to be able to authorize a vinegar type solution to help with overgrowth, based on some risk in vitro studies that were done. That seems they don't want that anymore. So the backup for that, especially after just speaking from personal experience, if you get an imported stallion, or for our domestic ones, we were having to clean and pack them multiple times extra, and then there was just a lot of overgrowth whenever you're testing them 21 days later. Usually but Pseudomonas being the primary one, but just a lot of extra overgrowth led for some challenging situations in trying to get more samples than normally you would think with the 3. So we think that this PCR for overgrowth situations can help in that type. This committee is also open to other resolutions. If you have some you would like to bring forward, happy to entertain those. One resolution that we had been working hard on and and I say we, but the American Horse Council had been taking up primary with the USDA animal health team, was a 2022 resolution, specifically number 17. It was an equine issues workshop. And the idea was to at least have one, if not have that on an annual or every other year basis. Due to some staffing changes and shortages with USDA that probably everybody's aware of, we postponed that on January 30th. It was going to be coming up pretty soon, but we postponed it on January 30th until those staffing needs can be met, and then we're planning to reassess that. We've also been working on the on an EHM guidance document update. That's been in works. All good things take time, right? Dr. Donana just showed us how that projects take time, but we've been working on that. I think we're getting a lot closer. There's been, since the last time, there's been testing advancements. We've also done some updates to some protocol clarifications that we thought could be better. And then we've also updated some checklists and references for those people that, you know, I don't expect anybody to have memorized this document, but just good, quick back of the book. Hey, this is what I need. This is what good biosecurity looks like. This is how much at risk we are based on these checklists. So we've been doing a lot of work there. It's not quite ready to land, but I think my goal is to have it land before the November meeting, and at least be able to present some on that, on the updates, and have drafts. At the meeting next time, we'll also be voting on the resolution responses. So we had 3 resolutions last year. So I'll set up a little voting mechanism, or at least that's my idea, is to set up a voting mechanism that will vote on the interim responses. We've received 2 out of the 3 resolutions have received interim responses from USDA. Again, so that's a review of the equine import, export, point of care testing, and a request for a government accountability review. We have the top 2 we've received interim responses for. If we get for resolution number 9, or the 3rd out of 3, we did put in an additional request on that today. Honestly, as I was organizing this, I was like, oh, we need to do that. Put in an additional request today, and if we have that by the time the next meeting rolls around, we will address that. Trying to think of what else I missed. Katie has been director of this for a long time, and then she handed the reins over to me. Dr. Odian is the vice chair. Katie, what have I missed that I should have, just to put you on the spot, because I know you really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, Joe, I've worked with you long enough. I know. I knew this was coming. Joe, just as a general, for folks that are new to this call, as we've had a lot of new people join my email distribution list, a resolution is something put forth by the committee that's asking another federal agency or industry or some group to do something. So most of the resolutions are focused on urging or asking or requesting something of USDA. Others can be, as the one Joe is referring to regarding the General Accountability Office request, that went, I believe, to the legislature. And so that would have to get a request back from, or the answer back from the legislature. The other 2 resolutions that Joe was referring to do ask USDA or some part of USDA to do something. So this is the way the U.S. Animal Health Association works with getting state, federal folks working together on addressing some issues that have come up within the industry, specifically in this Committee on Equine, as the U.S. Animal Health Association does have folks that are in other, USHA has other groups such as the Committee on Cattle, Committee on Bison, addressing all of the other species. So just for background purposes, the resolutions that Joe is talking about is what we as an industry Committee on Equine put forward to address some of the loopholes or issues or gaps that have been identified in the disease response efforts or disease control efforts. I think in general, this committee, as Joe says, meets every year at U.S. Animal Health Association. And as he mentioned, the Committee on Equine does meet this coming year in November, which is unusual because it's usually in October. But it will be in November and it will be in Denver, Colorado. And I think that's all I can think of right now, Joe, for your committee. Is there any questions? I don't see any, but on this topic. So I will thank Joe, and then I'm going to go to comments that were raised. And if anybody has any additional question or comments for other speakers or just in general, please put them in the chat or raise your hand. I do see in the chat, there is a comment that there is a huge problem with feral equids coming into the United States from Mexico on the Toho Odom Nation in southern Arizona, and many of the tribal members have horses and vaccination statuses vary. So that is one comment. Joe, here's a question to you. Joe, what did you mean by overgrowth? Bacterial question mark.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been clear. Yeah, it's a bacterial overgrowth that occurs whenever you are well, positive or negative, we still do a clean and pack for 5 days after, even after all the testing, even if it comes back negative on an import. But with that, especially with stallions, but also with mares, you mess up all of the normal flora, and we'll just get an overgrowth, a bacterial overgrowth, Pseudomonas. There's a lot of inhibitors that are on the plates that grow out contagious equine metritis, and therefore it's just a slow growing fragile organism. It takes about a week to report those out, and that just gives the other bacteria, if they are not inhibited with different antibiotics and other growth inhibitors, then they just consume the whole plate, and it becomes not possible to read the plate and truly say that no Taylorella was not detected.
Yeah, basically the NVSL cannot say that it's a negative test. So with an overgrowth, they can't make a decision, and it's required for release that they get the negative culture, and they can't determine a negative culture because of the bacterial overgrowth that is not allowing them to read the plate.
And if you're waiting a week between tests and you're not getting those results because the bacterial overgrowth isn't going to occur on day 1. It's going to occur on day maybe 4, but 5, 6, or 7 that occurs. And then you go back and you get that news, and then you're close to a week behind already. And then you got to go collect other tests, and it can significantly delay the import process. Just for us here in Florida, our big facilities are usually booked pretty darn tight. And if we had one delay, they can probably shift stuff around. But if they get multiple delays that are then causing stuff to get backed up weeks, we're going to have a larger issue, and they're going to be having to cancel or move stuff or shift stuff to other states. It's really tight here, and that's why this resolution would help, just to ensure the commerce flow. But yet PCR is a more sensitive mechanism, and they've done a lot of validation with the domestic herd outbreak. So I think we're a lot closer to validation, and that's why we're putting in this request now. Do I also use PCR as a diagnostic? Not as a standard import diagnostic. That what is set up is written into the Code of Federal Regulation, and right now the Code of Federal Regulation just has culture as what it's used for. Is there the opportunity to change that over time? Sure. Code of Federal Regulation is pretty slow to change, though. So I think that this is just a step that would be helpful on both ends, right? It gives us good diagnostics, but yet still allows the movement of animals rather than just going to straight PCR. Yep.
From an industry perspective, we are going to continue to require the live cover breeding as a way of detection, because and not go with just PCR, and go with culture as the standard for the concerns that are related to missing a case and the potential impact on a breeding industry. Any other questions, comments? Okay, just a couple reminders. Thank you, Dr. Fish, for your update, and we look forward to you facilitating the call next month. So thank you.
You get a week, you get a month off.
I do. Thank you. I appreciate that. Just a couple updates for everyone. Our next call is July 10th at the same time, and we'll get out information and agenda in advance. As a reminder, this call will be posted to the Equine Disease Communication Center within a week of today. And just another reminder is, if you have anybody that is interested in joining this call and being on the email distribution list, please have them email me. And I welcome any topic suggestions or questions. If you have questions for anybody that has spoken or suggested speakers and questions, please forward those to me as well, and I'm happy to put those forth to the potential speaker or to get answers to deliver to folks on this call. I appreciate everyone's time, and I wish you the best for the rest of today, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.